Fame can be a double-edged sword. It lifts you up, but if you're not careful, it cuts deep. And for Dennis Rodman, it wasn't just a blade. It was a wrecking ball, swinging wild, crashing through everything in its path. The rebounds, the rings, the rockstar lifestyle. It was all larger than life. But somewhere between the glory and the chaos, something snapped. A brutal divorce shattered his world, a near-suicidal crisis pushed him to the edge, and financial struggles drained the millions he once had. The same fire that made him unstoppable on the court ended up burning everything down. But the craziest part, it didn't have to be this way. Let's rewind a bit. Rodman wasn't born into the glitz and glam. He came from pretty humble beginnings. Born on May 13, 1961, he grew up in the rough streets of Dallas, Texas. His father walked out when he was just 3 years old, leaving his mother to raise him and his sisters on her own. Money was tight, and she worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. But Dennis, he felt invisible. If anything, he was the last person you'd expect to become an NBA legend. Unlike most NBA stars, Rodman wasn't a basketball prodigy. He didn't dominate the high school courts or break records. In fact, he wasn't even good enough to make the varsity team. He was short, awkward, and overlooked. It wasn't until after high school that he hit a crazy growth spurt, shooting up to 6 feet 7 inches. Suddenly, the kid nobody cared about had a shot. That changed everything. Rodman started his journey at Cook County Junior College in Dallas before transferring to Southeastern Oklahoma State University, where he became a rebounding machine, averaging 25 points and 15 rebounds per game. His energy was unmatched. He played like every rebound was life or death, and that caught the attention of NBA scouts. In 1986, the Detroit Pistons took a chance on him in the second round of the draft. Most guys pick that late never make it. But Rodman, he outworked everyone. The Pistons of the late 80s weren't just a team, they were a gang. The bad boys played dirty, and they loved it. Elbows, hard fouls, in-your-face defense. It was old-school, blue-collar basketball, and Rodman fit right in. With his relentless defense and rebounding, he became a key piece of the Pistons' championship runs in 1989 and 1990. He wasn't a scorer, but he didn't need to be. His job was to make life miserable for opponents, and he did it better than anyone. Rodman became one of the best defenders in the league. He won back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards in 1990 and 1991, frustrating even the best scorers in the game. And when it came to rebounding, he was in a league of his own. He wasn't the tallest nor the strongest. He wasn't even an exceptional leaper. But Rodman had an obsession with timing, positioning, and hustle. He studied how the ball bounced off the rim, knew exactly where to be, and outworked everyone. For 7 straight seasons, 1991 to 92 to 1997 to 98, he led the league in rebounding, finishing his career with 11,954 boards, an unreal number for a guy who barely scored. Rodman was a disruptor, but just when everything seemed perfect, his world fell apart. Dennis had always struggled with feeling alone. He never had a real father figure growing up, but in Detroit, he found one. His coach, Chuck Daly. Daly believed in him. He kept him grounded. He gave him structure, guidance, and for the first time in his life, stability. But in 1992, Daly suddenly stepped down, and for Rodman, it felt like his world collapsed. He spiraled. The team was breaking apart. His mentor was gone, and he didn't know how to handle it. That's when things got dark. He hit rock bottom. One night in 1993, Dennis was found sitting in his truck outside the Pistons arena with a gun. He later admitted he was in a dark place and was this close to ending it all. The pressure, the loneliness, the feeling of being lost, it all hit him at once. But instead of giving up completely, he transformed. And that's when the Dennis Rodman the world knows today was born. It was a completely different Dennis Rodman. The quiet, hardworking kid from Dallas, gone. The tattoos, the dyed hair, the piercings, the outrageous outfits. The guy who partied with Madonna, wore wedding dresses, and made every tabloid in America. Rodman went from NBA star to full-blown rock star. But here's the thing. While all this craziness was happening, he was still dominating on the court. After a messy stint with the San Antonio Spurs and a whole lot of drama, where he headbutted a referee, kicked a cameraman, got suspended multiple times and clashed with teammates, he was traded to the Chicago Bulls in 1995. Now this was the team: Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Phil Jackson, and a crew ready to dominate. At first, people weren't sure if Rodman's antics would fit in with Jordan's intense work ethic. But guess what? It worked. The Chicago Bulls were already great, but adding Rodman made them unstoppable. Rodman brought grit and toughness to an already stacked team. The Bulls went on to win 3 straight championships from 1996 to 1998, and Rodman was a huge part of that. While Jordan was doing Jordan things, Rodman's was doing everything else. His rebounding was unreal, He was like a magnet for the ball, and even though he wasn't scoring, his impact was undeniable. But while the Bulls were dominating, Rodman was spiraling. Let's not pretend it was all smooth sailing. Rodman being Rodman meant drama was never far behind. Rodman wasn't just partying, he was going insane. He'd show up to games hungover. He'd disappear for days at a time. Like that time in the middle of the 1997-98 season when he randomly decided to take a vacation to Las Vegas. While the team was gearing up for another championship run, Rodman was out partying. Jordan had to personally drag him back. He came back like nothing happened, and somehow they just rolled with it. Classic Dennis. And then there was his personal life. Rodman wasn't just making headlines for his basketball skills. His love life was just as chaotic. First, there was Madonna. He briefly dated Madonna, and the two were everywhere in the mid-90s. He later claimed she wanted to have his baby and even offered him millions to make it happen. After that, he married Carmen Electra, but that lasted less than a year. The two had a legendary weekend in Vegas that ended in disaster. Booze, fights, and an annulment. The marriage lasted 9 days before Carmen filed for divorce, citing Rodman's wild behavior. But the craziest part? The NBA put up with all of it, because Rodman could still play. When the Bulls dynasty ended in '98, so did Rodman's NBA career. He bounced from team to team, the Lakers, the Mavericks, but he was done. His body couldn't keep up with his lifestyle. He wasn't the same guy who was outworking everyone, and once he lost that edge, the league lost interest. Then came the real downfall. It was brutal. You'd think a guy with 5 rings and millions in the bank would be set for life, right? Not Dennis. Rodman's love for excess didn't stop at partying. It extended to gambling, and it became one of his biggest vices. The bright lights of Las Vegas pulled him in, and he couldn't resist the high-stakes thrill. At first, it seemed like just another part of the wild Rodman persona, but over time, it became clear he wasn't in control. He'd spend nights gambling away hundreds of thousands of dollars in casinos, sometimes losing millions in a single night. Reports surfaced that Rodman owed massive debts to casinos. He was making terrible financial decisions, burning through his money faster than he could make it. And once his NBA career ended, things only got worse. The millions he earned, gone. Child support payments, legal troubles, and bad investments left him broke. At one point, he reportedly owed over $800,000 in unpaid child support. Then came the arrests, DUIs, public drunkenness, disturbing the peace. He was getting thrown in jail like it was a routine. It was one thing after another, and it was heartbreaking to see. The guy who once owned the league was now showing up on reality TV, slurring his words and looking lost. And then, because this is Dennis Rodman, he somehow ended up friends with Kim Jong-un. Yes, that Kim Jong-un. Rodman made multiple trips to North Korea, called the dictator his friend for life, and even tried to play peacemaker between the US and North Korea. The entire world was confused. Was this some kind of joke? A publicity stunt? Nope. Dennis was dead serious. He even broke down crying on TV about how much he cared about North Korea. By this point, Rodman's reputation was all over the place. He wasn't just an NBA legend, he was a cautionary tale. Rodman has tried to clean up his act. He's been in and out of rehab. He's done interviews saying he's working on himself. But the truth is, he's still struggling. At 60+ years old, the man who once ruled the NBA is now just trying to hold it together. He's had brief moments of redemption, helping coach young players, making appearances at NBA events. But his past keeps catching up with him. Dennis Rodman's story is complicated. He was one of the greatest defensive players the game has ever seen. A 5-time champion, a rebounding machine, a player who changed the game without ever needing to score. But he was also his own worst enemy. The wild lifestyle, the reckless decisions, the never-ending chaos. It all caught up with him in the end. So, was it all worth it? Did he really destroy his career? Or was he just living life on his own terms? Maybe both. One thing's for sure, there will never be another Dennis Rodman. Even after everything, Rodman is still standing. He's still Dennis Rodman. Love him or hate him, you can't ignore him. And maybe that's exactly how he wanted it all along. If you enjoyed this story about the rise and fall of an NBA legend, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories on the most unforgettable figures in basketball history. See you in the next video.